Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel on another episode of Sports. I'm Shakir. I do videos on sports, finance, reviews of movies, series, books, and also products. Today we will be looking back at the Formula One season of 2021 from the start till the end. Unlike 2020, this season was not one-sided. We saw a lot of competition between the top position for both drivers and constructor championship. We also saw good fight for the other positions as well. Red Bull were really competitive this season and they were an equal match to Mercedes. Ferrari, even though they are away from their prime, this season they were really good and they came back with a vengeance. McLaren were consistent compared to last year. The 2021 season kicked off with 23 races in the schedule, but it finished with only 22 races. Australia, Japan, and Singapore pulled out of the races due to the pandemic. Instead, Turkey and Qatar got its first Grand Prix. The season kicked off from Bahrain in the Shakir Grand Prix circuit. Verstappen continues dominance from Abu Dhabi last year and took pole position. The race was pretty intense. Hamilton won the battle, but Verstappen was less than a second behind him. This set up a contest for the entire year. Hamilton was now 7 points ahead of Verstappen. We moved to Imola for the second round, where Hamilton clinched his first pole of the season, followed by Verstappen and Perez. The race started with some rain, so everybody were in their inters. There was some drama during the race, but Verstappen came out on top and won the race, followed by Hamilton, and Lando Norris got his first podium of the season. Hamilton had the fastest lap, so at this stage he was still 1 point ahead of Verstappen. The third round was in Portugal. Mercedes totally dominated the circuit. Bottas took pole in the qualifying, followed by Hamilton and Verstappen. Even the race was dominated by Mercedes, except for Verstappen was able to overtake Bottas to clinch second place. Bottas came third, followed by Perez and Lando Norris. Hamilton was now 8 points ahead of Verstappen. We moved to Spain for the fourth race. Mercedes again dominated in Barcelona, with Hamilton taking pole. Verstappen followed Hamilton in second, Bottas third, and Leclerc fourth. The race went Mercedes' way as well, with the top four positions just same as the qualifying, with Perez finishing fifth. Mercedes went for a two-stop strategy compared to one-stop strategy of Red Bull, which let Hamilton overtake Verstappen in the 60th lap. Hamilton was now 14 points ahead of Verstappen. Now we moved on to the street circuits. That's where the Red Bull dominance came in and Mercedes struggled. We moved on to the lovely streets of Monaco for our fifth race. Ferrari were looking really good in this track. Leclerc set the pole in spite of crashing out in Q3. Verstappen came in second, Bottas third, and Sainz fourth. Leclerc had some technical issues in the race and he had to retire, which meant Max was able to win in Monaco for the first time ever. Sainz came in second, followed by Lando Norris, getting his second podium of the year. Hamilton struggled throughout the weekend and he came in seventh, which meant for the first time in the season, the championship lead shifted toward Verstappen and he was now 4 points ahead of Lewis. Red Bull have always dominated Azerbaijan, but this time it was Ferrari's turn and they looked really good in the circuit. Leclerc clinched the second pole of the season, followed by Lewis and Max. Gasly was fourth and Sainz was fifth. The race was dominated by Max throughout, but in the last final few laps, he had a puncture and he crashed out of the race. And the race had to be red flagged. In the restart, Perez was first, Lewis was second, and Lewis was well ahead of Perez in turn 1, but he did a mistake and he went wide, which meant Perez won the first race for Red Bull. He was followed by Vettel, who got the first podium of the season, and Gasly came in third. he got his first podium of the season as well. Leclerc came 4th, Norris 5th, and Alonso 6th. Hamilton finished 15, which meant he didn't get any points, and Verstappen was still ahead by 4 points. We move to France next for the first leg of the triple header, and the Red Bull dominance continued here as well. Verstappen qualified first, followed by Hamilton, Bottas, Perez. This time around, it was Red Bull's two-stop strategy against Mercedes' one-stop strategy, which won them the race. Max Verstappen came first, along with the fastest lap, which got him the maximum points from the race. Hamilton came second, followed by Perez, Bottas, and Norris. Verstappen's lead has now extended to 12 points. The next 2 races were in Austria, Red Bull's home Grand Prix. Red Bull showed their dominance again, with Verstappen clinching pole. Bottas came second, Hamilton third, Norris fourth, and Perez fifth. Bottas had to serve a 3-place grid penalty, so he had to start from 5th. In the race, Verstappen came first. Hamilton pitted in the final laps of the race to go for the fastest lap, and he succeeded in that as well. He came second. Bottas was third, Perez fourth, and Norris fifth. The gap between Verstappen and Hamilton now stood at 18 points in favor of Verstappen. Race number 9, the second Grand Prix in Austria, was no different for Red Bull. Max dominated it again. He clinched the pole, he won the race, and he also got the fastest lap. Norris qualified second, followed by Perez, Hamilton, and Bottas. Bottas finished the race second, followed by Norris, getting his 3rd podium of the year. Hamilton came 4th, followed by Sainz in 5th. The gap between Verstappen and Hamilton was now at 32 points, the highest difference between each the entire season. For round 10, we move to Silverstone, Hamilton's home Grand Prix. This was the first sprint race which F1 was experimenting. So there was a qualifying, sprint, and then a race. Hamilton finished first in quali, followed by Verstappen, Bottas, Leclerc, and Perez. In the sprint race, Verstappen was able to get past Hamilton in the first corner, and he finished first. Hamilton came second, followed by Bottas, Leclerc, and Norris. In the race, Hamilton and Verstappen touched in the high-speed Copse corner, and Verstappen crashed with a high-speed impact of 51G. The race was red flagged, which helped Hamilton get his car fixed and get back into the race. He got a 10-second time penalty for the crash, but that didn't really matter as he was pretty fast in the race and he was able to overtake Leclerc with just 4 laps to go. Hamilton finished the race first along with the fastest lap, Leclerc second, and Bottas came in third. Norris came in 4th in his home Grand Prix. The gap between Verstappen and Hamilton was now reduced to 8 points. Round 11 was in Hungary in Hungaroring. Hamilton qualified first, followed by Bottas, Verstappen, Perez, and Gasly. The race started in wet conditions and it had one of the biggest crashes of the season. Bottas, who had lost 3 places, braked too late and he went on to hit Norris in the back. And on his way, took out Perez. Norris went and hit Verstappen and both Perez and Bottas had to retire from the race. The race was red flagged, which led Verstappen to get his car fixed. Every single car went into the pit to change into dry tires, except for Hamilton, who restarted the race with his inters, which turned out to be a mistake. Ocon was leading the race at that point, and Hamilton had to pit in the next lap. Even though Hamilton came out in the back, he had the pace to climb up through the order and even win the race. But Alonso did a great job of slowing down Hamilton, and which meant Ocon went on to win his first Grand Prix. Vettel came second to get his second podium of the season, but was later disqualified due to lack of fuel in his car, which made Hamilton second and Sainz third. Verstappen, in spite of having a damaged car, was able to finish 8th to get 3 points. Hamilton now led the championship by 8 points. The next race was in Belgium, and it saw wet conditions all through the weekend. Verstappen qualified first, followed by surprisingly fast George Russell in wet conditions. Hamilton came in third. The race was really wet, and all the cars did 4 laps behind the safety car to finish the race and to avoid half the points. George Russell getting his first podium of his F1 career. Hamilton was now 3 points ahead of Verstappen in the championship battle. Next up was Verstappen's home Grand Prix in Netherlands. Verstappen dominated this weekend, and Mercedes didn't really have the pace to beat Red Bull. Verstappen qualified first, followed by Hamilton, Bottas and Perez. Verstappen dominated the race as well. Hamilton just didn't have the pace to match the Red Bull in the later part of the race. Verstappen finished first. Hamilton pitted in the later final laps of the race to get the fastest lap. He finished second, followed by Bottas. Gasly and Leclerc finished fourth and fifth. Verstappen now led Hamilton by 3 points. Next up was Monza for the second sprint race. Mercedes had really good pace in the qualifying on Friday, and they locked out the front row. McLaren had good pace as well. They came in 4th and 5th with Verstappen in between at 3rd. Hamilton didn't have a good start in the sprint and he dropped down to 5th place. Bottas came in 1st, followed by Verstappen, Ricciardo, Norris and Hamilton was 5th. Bottas had to start the race from the back as he changed his engine. In the race, Ricciardo went past Verstappen in turn 1 and led the race all along. Hamilton and Verstappen had a good fight for positions, which meant Norris was able to overtake Hamilton. After the first pit stop, Hamilton came ahead of Verstappen and they had a good fight through the first corners and they collided and took each other out. This time, clearly Verstappen's error. Ricciardo went on to win the race, followed by Lando Norris who came in second. McLaren's first win in 10 years and their first 1-2 after a gap of 11 years. This was also the first time this season the constructors were able to get a 1-2. Verstappen now led the championship battle by 5 points. Round 15 was from Sochi, Russia. Norris clinched pole, following up his second in Monza. Sainz was second, followed by Russell, Hamilton and Ricciardo. Verstappen took a new engine, so he had to start from 20th place. In the race, Norris was leading the race all throughout and was looking to win the first F1 of his life. But with rain imminent and him not wanting to pit, Hamilton was able to go into the pits and was able to overtake Norris in the final laps of the race. Verstappen, instead of starting at 20th, was able to finish second, followed by Sainz. Ricciardo came in 4th, Bottas 5th. Norris went down to number 7th. The gap now shifting towards Hamilton with 2 points. Next up was Turkey. Hamilton qualified first, followed by Bottas, Verstappen, Leclerc and Gasly. But Hamilton took a 10-place grid penalty due to his new combustion unit. He had to start from 11th. In the race, Bottas totally dominated the race. He won the race along with the fastest lap, followed by Verstappen. Perez came 3rd, followed by Leclerc and Hamilton. The gap now shifted towards Verstappen by 6 points. We move to Austin, Texas for the US Grand Prix. 400,000 people showed up for the race thanks to the growing popularity due to Drive to Survive. Verstappen qualified first, followed by Hamilton, Leclerc, Bottas and Perez. Bottas had to serve a 5-place grid penalty and he had to start from number 9th. Verstappen drove a clean race and won it. Hamilton came second along with the fastest lap. Perez 3rd, Sainz 4th and Ricciardo 5th. The gap between the leaders was at 12 points in favor of Verstappen. Next was the Mexican Grand Prix. This was Perez's home Grand Prix, so Red Bull had a huge fan following here. But Mercedes dominated the qualifying by Bottas qualifying first, Hamilton second, locking out the front row again. Verstappen was third, Perez fourth, locking out the second row. Gasly came in fifth. Verstappen overtook both Bottas and Hamilton in turn 1. Bottas got tagged and spun. Perez fought with Hamilton till the final lap to overtake him, but he was not successful. Perez finished third. The Mexican stood on the podium for the first time in their home Grand Prix. That was a proud moment for Perez. The gap between Verstappen and Hamilton was now at 19 points. Next up was a double header which started in Brazil. Hamilton took a new engine and he had to start the sprint from 20th position instead of qualifying first, followed by Verstappen, Bottas, Perez and Gasly. After the qualifying, Verstappen went and inspected and touched Hamilton's back wing, and Red Bull raised concerns about it. It was later found out that Hamilton's back wing was out by 2 mm and he was penalized 5 grid positions in the race. Verstappen was fined a huge $50,000 for his act. Bottas won the sprint, followed by Verstappen and Sainz. Hamilton was able to catch up 15 positions to finish the sprint at 5th place, which meant he will start the race at 10th position. Hamilton was just unstoppable during the race as well, and he was in Verstappen's mirror in quick time. Hamilton was trying to overtake Verstappen, and Verstappen ran out of the track, which meant both of them had to go out of the track. Luckily, Verstappen was not penalized for it, but Hamilton went on to overtake Verstappen and win the race as well. This was arguably one of the best races of Hamilton's entire career. He had to come up 25 positions to win the race. The gap now between the two drivers was down to 14 points. For round 20, we went to Qatar for the first time ever. Hamilton won the qualifying, followed by Verstappen, Bottas, Gasly and Alonso. Verstappen got a 5-place grid penalty for not slowing down during the double yellow flags in qualifying. Bottas got a 3 grid place penalty for not slowing down enough during the same incident. Hamilton led the race throughout and went on to win it. Verstappen was able to gain positions in the beginning of the race and he finished second. Alonso finished third, his first podium in 7 years, and boy, he was delighted. The gap between the two championship leaders was at 8 points. Next, we went to Jeddah for the street circuits for the first time. This was the fastest street circuit in F1. Mercedes showed their class. They locked out the front row, Hamilton first, Bottas second. Verstappen came third, followed by Leclerc and Perez. During the race, there was a huge crash during the first pit stop window. Both Mercedeses pitted on the safety car, but the race was red flagged. This meant Verstappen was able to change his tires during the red flag incident. So he was able to restart from first position. Verstappen was trying to overtake Hamilton and there was a lot of confusion, and there was another restart and Verstappen this time started at number 3 behind Hamilton. Verstappen went past Hamilton in turn 1 and took the lead, but Hamilton had the pace and he was all over Verstappen and he even overtook him in one of the corners, but Verstappen was adamant and took both of them out of the track. Verstappen was asked to give back the position strategically. Verstappen slowed down too much and there was some miscommunication and both the drivers crashed. But later on in that lap, Verstappen gave back the position to Hamilton in the DRS zone strategically, which meant that Verstappen was able to overtake Hamilton immediately. Hamilton then overtook Verstappen, but Verstappen got a 5-second penalty, followed by another 10-second penalty. But in spite of both the penalties, he finished second. Ocon, who was lucky and he got onto the top positions, but he was unlucky because in the end, Bottas overtook him to get the third position just before the line. Hamilton had the fastest lap, so going into Abu Dhabi, the championship contenders were tied in points. In the final race in Abu Dhabi, Max had great pace in qualifying and won pole, followed by Hamilton, Norris, Perez, and Sainz. The race was one of the most controversial races of entire F1 history. Hamilton took the lead in the first lap and Verstappen was following him in second. Later in the first lap, Verstappen did a late lunge on Hamilton's inside, but Hamilton went wide and he kept the position, just like what Verstappen did in Brazil. And just like Verstappen in Brazil, Hamilton was not penalized for it as well. After Verstappen and Hamilton pitted, Perez stayed back to take the lead of the race. Hamilton was second right behind Perez and he had much better pace than Perez. But Perez drove very strategically and very slowly to keep Hamilton behind him, which meant the gap between Verstappen and Hamilton, which was at 7 seconds, came down to 1 second by the time Hamilton went past Perez. This was a very strategic move and it turned out to be very beneficial for Red Bull during the end of the race. In lap 46, Hamilton was now 12 seconds ahead of Verstappen and was cruising to victory. But incidentally, Latifi crashed and the safety car was called in. Since there was only 12 seconds gap, Hamilton couldn't pit. Verstappen, thinking that there might be a restart, went into the pit to get fresher tires, and which worked in their favor. It looked like the race will end under safety cars as there weren't enough laps to get the back markers out and to get the safety car in. But Michael Masi did a controversial move of just letting the five back markers between Max and Hamilton to go past, and he got the safety car in the same lap as well, which was controversial. This meant Hamilton and Verstappen started right behind each other, and Verstappen, with the new set of tires, was able to get past Hamilton to win the race and also the championship. This was clearly some bending of the rules, and Toto Wolff was angry over the radio asking Michael Masi that it wasn't fair, and Michael Masi responded with his famous line that this is called motor racing, which I don't really agree with. Verstappen won his first world championship. His dad came out with the world champion shirt on him and hugged him, and it was a really emotional moment. Hamilton was really graceful in his defeat, even though a lot of people said that he was robbed of his championship. Mercedes appealed the decision of just letting the 5 back markers go during the safety car, and they also appealed against Max Verstappen going in front of Hamilton during the safety car. Both the appeals were rejected. Both Toto and Hamilton boycotted the award ceremony, which happened 3 days after the race concluded. There are also rumors floating around that Hamilton might not race in 2022. Hope that's not the case. Mercedes also dropped the idea of going for a lawsuit against FIA as they didn't want to win the championship in the court. And moreover, the decision would not be overturned. Christian Horner, as always, had a lot of words to say, saying that Mercedes not taking the defeat so well. But to be fair, if Red Bull were in a similar situation, Horner would have done a lot worse things. Hats off to Toto and Hamilton for taking it on their chin and moving on graciously. That was all about 2021 season. The 2022 season kicks off on 18th of March from Bahrain. The Australian Grand Prix here in Melbourne will be from 8th to 10th of April. It's going to be a cracker of a season. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on the comments. Please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Please check out our food and travel blog. The link is in the description below. Also check out the links for some freebies and rewards for the sites and services that I use. Alright everyone, that's all for today. Have a great week. I'll see you all soon. Ciao.